In this episode of NZ Business Owners, I interview a business advisor that's been working in businesses, on businesses for 35 years, and we try to talk about when should you register for GST and should you be a sole trader or should you have a company?
Okay, so you might be a contractor or have started a business, and you go to your accountant and they say you need to register for GST. Now, some industries, for instance, you some industries, for instance, are very price governed. So if you, for instance, were a lawnmower guy, so your cost for a lawn is $30 an hour, and you're doing a little square outside of Granny's, flat, and you register for GST, you're going to have to put 15% on top of that. They are not going to be able to claim that back. If you're working for another company, they don't care about the GST because they can claim it back. But that 15% could put you out of a sale. So you've got to factor that in. You don't have to register for it until you are earning 60,000, right? So once you hit 60,000, you're going to have to register whether you like it or not. So also registering for GST means that you are going to have to do your GST returns. And if you're not willing to do it yourself, or you can't do it yourself, or you just hate doing it, you're going to have to pay someone to do that. And it's usually about, for a two monthly GST return, it's about $200 on average. So there's reasons around it, and your accountant should be talking to you about that, deciding what's the best plan of attack. You might want to buy a big piece of equipment and you want to claim the GST on it. And then you could think about it then, buying it. But what you've got to remember is that big piece of equipment, you're going to, even if you don't claim the GST, you're going to get the tax benefits back from it over from depreciation over the next couple of years anyway. So you think carefully before you register for GST. It's not a given. You don't have to do it, and it's got to be what's best for your business right now. And right in the beginning, you're going to need every bit of money that you can get. Sure, if you're going to be buying a lot of assets, probably it'll help with your cash flow, that kind of thing. If you're buying a big expensive vehicle, it might help with your cash flow. But also GST, you can do it yourself easily if you think you're, capable of that kind of thing.
And
Yeah.
so the con is basically like when you got to price a job, you have to add the GST in it, and they might say no, and you're not good enough salesman to sort of convince them with the extra 15%.
Yeah, like there are some industries out there that are very, price governed. Like you're going to lose that sale, and if you're not dealing with another business, if your customers are not another business, it's going to matter, what that you're being charged, because they're like, well, I don't want to be paying that extra 15%. The people who you're working for.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and but that's the kind of conversation you need to have with your accountant when you start up with them. You don't say, well, you've got to be GST registered in this. Ask the questions. Why do I really need to be GST registered? You can be GST registered if you're a company, and also if you're a sole trader, either of them. But I would avoid it. If you don't have to, I'd avoid it like the plague, because it's, if you don't pay that GST, which is actually one of the main problems with outstanding taxes, is people's GST. If you don't pay that GST and you're not putting the money aside, it's a downward slope for your business. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories of, people not managing it or going away and then having this big GST bill, and it just stuffs everything.
Yeah, it does. It's very hard to claw it back, because if you miss that first payment, then you're going to, and and you have to make installment arrangements with the Inland Revenue. Very hard to claw your way back because they're going to ask you to pay the next one on time. You've got to show that going forward you're going to be compliant. So yeah, I just think about that. Your accountant that you go with needs to be having these conversations with you and telling you the implications of registering for GST.
So let's say you miss your GST and then you're like, oh, sorry, I got no money. And they're like, okay, you can go on a payment plan, but you got to make sure the next time it comes, whenever that is, 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah, this is another thing. You can choose to be 1 monthly, 2 monthly, or 6 monthly as do your GST returns. And people start out and they go, wow, I'll do 6 monthly because it sounds awful doing that, and I'm going to do it then. And I'm like, okay, are you good with money? That's what I'll say to them. And they'll go, I'm okay. And I'll go, right, because you've got to put the money away, in 6 months' time. And if you've got kids, pets, whatever, is a good example. If anything happens to them, you're not going to go, oh, that's the GST money. I'm going to keep that there. I'm not touching that, which is obviously what Inland Revenue expects you to do. You're going to use that money. People have emergencies all the time. So it's a bigger risk, that 6 monthly, because if you don't have that money there in 6 months' time, you're really in the shit because it's a lot more. It's built up a lot more. It could be 10, 20 grand, whatever. And unless you're really good with money, and by saying that, I mean you're single, you're investing it, you're getting, you're investing that money into to make more money for you, because people think, oh, I'll put that into it and gain the interest on it. I'm not giving that to Inland Revenue, or car dealers specifically will think I can use that money to flick over a few more cars and make more money for my business. And I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm all for that. As long as you can do it. If you've got a bad history of GST, go 2 monthly, because it's out of your bank account quicker, and it's going to be a smaller amount. The downside of that is obviously you have to do it more often, do that GST return more often. When I started out 100 years ago, I used to do my husband's GST returns because I could. And we had small kids, we were renovating a house, that kind of thing. And I did it monthly for us because I thought we're going to spend that money and then we're going to get in real trouble. So I did it on a monthly basis, just on a little spreadsheet, and sent the money to Inland Revenue. So when people come to me and they've got a really bad cash flow situation, I often go to them, 6 monthly GST, and they go, yep. And I'll go, right, we're going to change that to 2 monthly now. You can't change it till that 6 monthly period is over, but, those are little things that will help you with your cash flow, because it just freaks me out when people are on 6 monthly GST unless they're very good with money,
How bad does it get? Like, can they ban you from business? Like, now you keep missing your GST bill and then they turn up at your house and possess all your stuff? Or how bad does it get?
No. Oh, no. Okay, so what happens is, and what is kind of annoying with Inland Revenue is it's very, it's not consistent. It's inconsistent about who they contact. It's not like, they're trying to fix that, but they're doing upgrades all the time to try and get it more consistent, I believe, because I have had people harass my one client over 5 grand with GST, and they've missed one payment, and then yet I've got another customer who hasn't paid any for 7 years, and I've been harassing him. Nobody's contacted him. Nobody's done anything. I'm like, what the hell? So when the Inland Revenue ring me about the 5 grand one, I go, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? About $5,000. And he's been on, he's been paying it consistently, perfectly or, for like 5 years or whatever in business. So it's not consistent. It just depends when they're allotted to certain people to work on. And when your number's up, you might get the person who is going to target you, and then that's what you got to worry about. So what's going to happen to you is they'll start sending letters. You might ignore them, that kind of thing. They'll ring up you and say, what's happening with this, and okay, if you don't pull it into line, then they might leave it a little bit while longer and they'll keep going at you. But eventually, what will happen is your fines will build up. You'll get fines and interest on not paying your GST. If you don't file it, you'll get a $50 fine. But if you don't pay the money that you filed, they will charge you interest on it. And that will build up and build up. Often, if it goes down the track, the interest is more than the actual core bill, the core debt, So then if you're smart and you've got a good accountant, you'll go to that accountant and you'll say, can you help me with this? This is what I would say to you, all right, if you can offer them a pile of, a chunk of money. Say if you owe 100,000 worth of taxes, it's not unusual, surprisingly. The core debt might be 50,000. There's all the core debt. Everything else is interest and penalties. And that's realistic. That is actually a realistic scenario. If you can come up with the 50 grand, then I've got leverage to ring up, because their duty is to get the money in, get something paid. So I would say to them, okay, look, and I'd make a plan of what's the core debt. You can get it out of inland revenue anyway, if you can find it in there, and saying how it's split up. And I'll go, look, this is interest, this is penalties. If we pay $50,000 today in a bank loan, you get a bank loan or something, then we can, they might accept it and then the rest will go away, right? But now you've got to face it. That person on the phone might say yes, they might say no. There's no consistency. That's what the problem is, right? So, and she's been assigned to you. So then what happens is I would say to them, okay, inland revenue, so they can't pay the 100,000, they have no assets. So what are you going to do? You're going to liquidate them and you're going to get nothing. And I'll go, that's not very good for the New Zealand,
Taxpayer.
the New Zealand taxpayer, is it? And so then I spend about 6 months leveraging them with that, because basically it's a power play, and then they'll come back and go, yeah, we'll get rid of that for you. Because one of their superiors will come in and look at it and go, look, Jesus, just accept the 50 grand, If you continue to ignore it, they could liquidate your company. If you don't have a company and you're just a sole trader, they'll bankrupt you, Yeah. So that's what you don't want. You do not want to be bankrupted. Liquidating is bad. We don't want that either, your company. But bankruptcy is terrible. So you don't want to do that. So that's why you cannot put your head in the sand. If you have been putting your head in the sand, go and see somebody. And if that accountant is not giving you the right answers, then, or you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel like they know their stuff or they care about you, find another one, And, but the reason you pay the money, some people charge a fortune. I don't charge enough. Because I get really invested in it, and also these people don't have money to start with, obviously that's why they're in this shit, then you need to, the reason you're paying the money is it's grueling getting that that's getting that answer for you. Getting the right results for you.
Is liquidation and bankruptcy like what's the difference? Like bankruptcy, you can't run a company for 5 years or something, or get a house loan, or what's
Well, the
the?
bankruptcy thing is the problem with bankruptcy is you can't even have a bank account. You've got to have it managed.
Someone's got to manage your bank account.
Yeah, yeah. You have to get an accountant to manage your bank account. You can't go out for a holiday overseas unless you get approval. It's on your credit record. You won't be able to get a house either. Even if, you got given a pile of money for a deposit, you won't get a house. Liquidation, that's why you start. Well, one of the couple of reasons that you open a company is so that you can have, because that's what limited liability means that the liability is only on that company, and it'll liquidate, and you'll have to close it down, and you'll have to employ a liquidator. You will have to, or the Inland Revenue will come in, and if they're doing it to you, you'll get one of theirs, which you don't want either. And a good liquidator will sell your assets, any assets you've got under the company, and pay that all out to Inland Revenue or your other debtor,
So if you miss debt, that's when you get wrecked. So if you have debt to the government or debt to creditors, that's when you go in liquidation, and then
Yep.
if you can't pay, then they bankrupt you.
Yes. A
And you
long
can't go
time down
holiday.
the track, they will, if you've ever had that situation before, if you've liquidated before, they'll have that records of that, and you'll be a target because you're supposed to have learned your lesson and been totally compliant after that.
How do you reverse bankruptcy? Like, so you pay them all back with interest. You say, "Sorry, Bob, my bad. I'm better now." Like, can you? How do you?
No, it's on your record. The banks know it. The banks know it. Everyone knows it. Your credit rating is stuffed.
Good. So you can't. So yeah, you just can't get money. You can't lend money. Is there anything else? Like, you can't be on the board of directors of a charity or something?
No, you can. You can. That's totally up to you. If
So you have
you
to find an accountant babysit you and look at your account every week or whatever. You got to pay them
no.
whatever $2,000 a year to look at your account and say what you can and can't do. Or what do you mean when you said watching you?
Oh, wow. Well, you mean accountant who's looking after you?
Well, no. So I think if I heard you correctly, when you
Oh,
go
yes,
bankrupt, you
yes,
have to get someone to look over you.
yes. You do. You can't have a bank account in your name. It has to be in your accountant's name, and you have to be on wages. From then on.
Oh, you can't run a business
No, shit, no.
ever. How do you fix it?
Well, it's
Do you pay them
it's
back?
it's a lot more. I'm not sure the exact number of years, but it's a lot more than liquidation.
Jeez. Okay, so don't overheave money, and you're good.
Don't. It's usually it's usually from my experience, and this is why people want you to get. Uh, they want personal guarantee if you're a company. It's usually big building companies, placemakers, carters. They've just been stung so many times because businesses liquidate, and they've clocked up their account, you know, on for materials that people have built a house with, and they go into liquidate. The builder goes into liquidation. He can't pay. He's not going to pay the bills. You're stuffed. So they get a personal guarantee, which means that they can take your personal assets. You know, so because otherwise you'd go, well, I've got this Ferrari here, and it's in my personal name, not in the company. So if you liquidate the company, they don't touch your personal assets. But if you give a personal guarantee, then they can take that. So be very careful in business about signing things that give a personal guarantee.
Jeez, and then off air you talk about when should you get sole trader and when should you get a company and the
Okay,
structures and stuff. What are the different ones?
okay. Well, let me just tell you the benefits of a company. Obviously, it's limited liability. It's a limited liability. It's a, you know, if it stuffs up, then they can't attack you personally. It's you will be able, you won't be able to start a business for a couple of years. Not sure the exact thing. I mean, I'm not an expert at it, but they, if you're going to have a company, what the benefits are, it looks more professional. It looks like you've been around a lot longer. Just does. So that's the thing. You can also get shareholders in. That's why you do it. I mean, obviously, if it's got a separate IRD number. So obviously, if you're a sole trader, you can't go into business with somebody else because it's on your IRD number. That's it. So you might think. So when people come to me and they're starting a business, should I do this? And I go, well, what's your long-term goal? You want to grow this huge? Do you want to go anywhere do you want to take offers from people but coming in? If somebody's got a similar business, do you want them to come in with you? That kind of thing. Oh, yep, I want to do that. And I go, right, let's open a company. It's about $180 to open it, but on the company's office. Very simple. We're one of the easiest companies if not the easiest company in the world to open a company online. Then you can invite. Say, do you want to get a contract for somebody, and they come in and they be a shareholder with you, and they bring their value to it as well. Can't do that as a sole trader. But every year you've got to pay your $45 plus GST to keep that company going. You also have to do an extra tax return. It's an IR4. Don't have to do that if you're a sole trader. It's just an IR3, which is just you doing it. So there's different reasons. So if you're just a contractor, if your boss says to you, I want you to go on contract now, don't open a company. You don't need to open a company. Just be a sole trader. Use your IRD number. That's it. You don't have to do anything at that stage. You just start invoicing them and put your IRD number on it. So if you're just a small guy and your boss has told you, oh, we want you to be on contract now, don't open a company. Waste of time and money. When the time comes, you can do that. When you think, I want to go out on my own, I want to do what my boss is doing, then open a company. Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of people who are just little builders or something, and they're in their 20s and they've opened a company. And I'm like, why did you do that? Oh, I thought we had to. No, it just means that your accountant's going to make more money from you because they're going to do an extra tax return for you. And it's just waste of time,
Yeah, well, on the accountant front, so how do you be savvy? How do you about to come in to see an accountant, and they're good with numbers, they might know more than you, and they're going to say get this, get that, and then they all get more money, and you're like, how do you even know they're good, and how do you stop yourself getting stitched up?
Well, this is how I would know they're good, right? Somebody, and it doesn't matter if I've seen books that people have come to us. I've seen people who have done accounts from very high-end accountants, and I've seen them. And this guy had a really bad cash flow situation. He ended up leaving the country and going, and just leaving the whole business. And I was like, he'd started a restaurant, and I looked at it, and I'm like, well, and he'd been going for 2 years, and I was like, I looked at the books. And because you depreciate your assets, each year, it's a huge amount of money that you can generally save off your taxes. And I looked and I'm not an expert in restaurants, but I think under the assets, there should be a pile of kitchen equipment. There was nothing. And he went, yeah, I bought it all. I've redone the whole kitchen. We've got high-end kitchen equipment. I've spent nearly 80 grand on it. Well, they weren't listed in there. And I went, why is it not in there? And I said, was it in your books? Because it had to be coded somewhere when you bought it. And he went, oh no, my dad bought that for the business. My dad gave me the money. So this high-end accountancy firm wasn't the top four, but, the big four, but close to it. They hadn't asked him the questions, or they hadn't looked at it and gone, oh shit, there should be, everyone buys. They were already always upgrading, the thing, but there was nothing in there. And they never asked him the question, where's your assets in there? Because they possibly could have, I don't know, saved him. It would have been 20 grand less on the taxes, Yeah. And so you need somebody who's going to ask you questions about your thing. They're not going to go, thanks, send me your bank, send me a CSV of your bank things. We'll load it in, we'll code it out. There's your tax return. You want somebody who's going to be asking you questions and has a little bit of common sense, like, well, a lot of common sense, and really cares. Like, for instance, GST return. I had a painter who came to me. He pulled up outside. You need somebody who's actually cares enough to ask the questions. And was doing his GST return. And I said to him, have you bought any assets? And he goes, no. And then, because you can claim a lot on a new vehicle. So I'm looking out the window and I said, have you got a new van there? And he goes, oh yeah, but I've got a really bad credit rating. So my wife bought it, on her credit rating. And I said, yes, but you can still claim that under the business because it's your business vehicle. That I'll just do a journal and for you and we will claim that. Oh, can you do that? Well, he would have lost a big pile of money if I hadn't actually paid attention. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to, that, if you hadn't parked there, I wouldn't have known, I wouldn't have known. Eventually I would have seen him around and thought, oh, that looks like you. But you need somebody who is going, and not every accountant has the time to do that kind of thing. But, that's the kind of thing you want from somebody. You don't want somebody who's just going, yeah, send me the stuff and churning it out,
So they ask questions, and they don't start saying they're wizards and can save you hundreds of millions of dollars on your tax.
Yeah. Well, there's people out there, accountancy firms, who have actually got liquidated themselves, and that I know of, and they definitely do that to people. They're like, get a trust, do this, do that, do that. It's all so that they can make extra money, And so those people who are under them are thinking, I've got my accountant's the best. Yes, he's saving me this and he's saving me that. They're just spinning you a story, They're just salesmen. What somebody told me, somebody else who's an accountant said, they're snake oil salesmen. That's all,
What's some of the worst snake oil you've heard? Like, so they'll say, oh, you get a trust because of this and that. Because, I mean, trusts aren't that good for relationship property. They're still pretty good for creditors. But they're not.
Well, trusts we're in this country, we're one of the highest countries in the world for trust per capita.
Yeah, same.
And it's because lawyers make money off it, and so do accountants, right? Now, it's going down now because people are getting wise to it. There's instances where you should have a trust, and it's a good idea. I think it's great. I mean, I'd love to have, if I had quite a few rental properties, I would put them in a trust because I know that I'm not going to sell it before I die or whatever, and it's going to be left for generations in the future. That's what it's for. And you're supposed to get somebody to look at it every year and go, yeah, okay, what are we going to do with this? When I say somebody, I mean the people who are running the trust, people who have been appointed to run the trust. It can be a lawyer, it can be one of the brothers and sisters or whatever in there, and they decide if things are going to be spent out of the trust, and you're supposed to have a meeting. It's supposed to be run properly. If you just chuck it into a trust and you don't treat it like that, then the amount of safety you've got around that trust, because they can be cracked open. For instance, if you got ripped off by somebody, say for instance, you were owed a ton of money by someone and they liquidated, you'd be incensed, absolutely incensed, because you knew they had all this property out there. And they're like, good luck to you, it's in a trust. Well, people are now not accepting that. They're going to court and going, I want that trust cracked open. It's bullshit, And so you've got to actually, what's trying to be done now is you've got to prove that it is actually a trust, a legitimate trust. It's not just something to cover your ass when you rip off people. That's the thing, because that's what people do. Seriously, when you get into the nitty-gritty of, liquidations and that kind of thing, people who are, habitual liquidators, and there's lots of them out there.
Geez, yeah, I mean, trust, fundamentally, you got to treat it like separate property. And like one of the things, I saw this package from a lawyer when I was a financial planner, and it was like, oh, we can put it in a trust to protect you from the rest, so you can still get the rest home subsidy, which is basically like when you get close to retirement, you can get the government to help you out, fund your care and stuff like that. But the trust is actually a red flag now, and a lot of people don't run it right. They're not treating it like separate property.
That's right. So, there's some guys that I do the accounts for, and that they are literally a family. They're a great family from, immigrants, and they wanted to start buying property. And I'm like, well, what's your end game with that property? And they said, well, it's for us to have, they were actually refugees that came in. They've been here long term, And they said, well, it's for our future generations and all that sort of thing. I went, you should definitely do a trust. That would be really good, But, yeah, I mean, I'm all about saving money. I'm all about saving taxes. But I just don't want people to get sucked into getting things that they think is going to save them if it isn't. If you're going to start a trust, treat it like it properly as a trust,
Yeah, and there's a cost, there's admin.
There's a cost, there's admin, that kind of thing.
The other thing is the consequence for your family. So we had an example with a client. Basically, they owned a house in a trust. One of them died. The new partner couldn't get access to the house because they didn't own it because of the trust. They half owned it, but they couldn't sell it because the children of the original family weren't a fan of her now that dad's dead.
Yeah, sounds
so now she's got a half a house and she can't live in it.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Trusts, to close them down and all that sort of thing are a real pain. And, you've got to think about all these things.
Well said. All right, well, thanks for coming on the podcast. We're all done.
Okay. That's okay. All right then.